With the advent of the global electronic economy and new information technologies, leaders are spending anywhere now from between 50 to 80% of their time away from headquarters, of being in other cities, in other continents. The notion that of detached engagement, as I've sought to elaborate it sounds very contradictory. I think to live to the actual the experience of being a leader through detached engagement is remarkably different. It's quite experimental in feel. And it essentially, both terms apply. On the one hand, a leader is engaged, is leading their company, but the notion of detachment refers to the fact that they're often doing so at a distance. They're using the new technologies. They can be elsewhere, but the new technologies are allowing them to still be heavily involved, to raise questions, to lead their company, but they're doing so, as I say, at a distance. Floating is the answer to the question of what happens after we've moved away from a command and control model of management and leadership. Floating essentially refers to either the outsourcing or the sharing of certain tasks and responsibilities among colleagues. It can be a floating of responsibilities from the role of leader, managing director or CEO, but it could also be a floating of responsibilities from one part of a company to another part of the company. What's particularly interesting and why we use the term floating is because it involves a degree of trust. It's a sharing of responsibilities and roles in a new way. And the trust is experienced differently to more routine forms of trust, because it's trust that has to be worked at day in and day out. Network individualism, essentially, it sounds a very individual type of concept. It's far from it. There's not much that's individualistic about network individualism. Again, its context is especially new information technologies. Today, the person is the portal. The leader is carrying with her, with him, as they move around these different cities, as they move around these different organizational settings, all the kind of technological equipment they need to lead the life on the move, to be a leader on the move. So networked individualism essentially tries to capture the way in which individuals and leaders today are going about building up forms of network capital to sustain and to develop relationships with other leaders who are not physically proximate. Again, it's a tricky kind of notion, because the idea of leaders looking for escape routes sounds like a form of escapism. It's anything but. In fact, I think in these early days of the 21st century, one of the key tasks of good leadership is to be trying to constantly monitor the various exit strategies and the exit pathways for companies to stop undertaking particular projects. They may have been very successful projects, but it's time for companies and organizations to look at doing something else. And with every exit strategy that's undertaken, then you need new entrances. How do we develop new projects and go along new pathways? So the mapping of exit strategies is something that we see as a key part of innovation for knowledge-intensive economies.